Welcome, everyone. I am your co-host, Christy, and we are on the Celebrating Singles podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to my dear friend, Hooman, who we're going to be interviewing today. Welcome, Hooman.
Thank you so much for having me, Christy. Super excited to be here.
I am really excited, too. I can't believe this is our first podcast we've ever done together, actually. But Hooman and I met when we both lived in San Francisco. And then really, I would say our friendship grew when you came out to a leadership retreat in Kona. Yeah. And now we've been on several trips together. And I am just so excited today to celebrate you and the gift that is you. And if you're in and around the San Francisco Bay Area, if you have not had a chance to meet Hooman yet, he is a treat, and we're going to have a great conversation today. So thanks so much for taking this time today.
It's my pleasure, really. I can't wait to talk about singleness and dating and life and the future.
Absolutely. All right, let's do it. Okay, so first, this project really, our mission is to really showcase amazing people who also happen to be single. And so, Hooman, you are absolutely on that list. And let's just talk a little bit about what you've been able to do in your life. Brag on yourself a little bit. I just want to celebrate the gift that is you. And you have had such a diversity of different projects you've worked on, lives you've lived. So do you want to just give us a brief snapshot of some of the things that you've been able to put your hands to?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the San Francisco Bay Area, I was on a radio station for 21 years. The station was called Alice at 97.3. I was on the morning show. In 2011, I shot the first full-length feature film on a cell phone, qualified for the Academy Awards. In 2012, Dolly Parton wrote and performed 5 original songs for that movie. And then, so cool. I'm pretty well traveled. Gosh, I've probably been to 20, 25 countries throughout the world and at least half the states in the United States. And now I'm a creative director over these kind of fancy, cool boutique hotels. It's mostly in the Bay Area. So that's a little snapshot into my life.
So fun. There's so many directions we could go there. And you are chocked full of really, really good stories. I'm actually curious. We'll start this out kind of interesting. Actually, you know what? Okay, we can get to the funny stories. I'm sure we will get there. But I really respect you, Hooman. I respect the life you've lived and respect the way that you have just I would say, lived your life well in singleness. So can we start out on the gates? Because I actually feel like you can give us some really, I don't know, beautiful insight. And we'll get to the funny stories, I'm sure too. But a lot of our listeners, right, are not necessarily in a good place with singleness. And there are a ton of struggles. And so we want this to be a place of raw conversation and something where people can actually, really start to understand the struggles and the pain of singleness, as well as the joy and the things that we can celebrate. Can we just jump right in the deep end, Hooman, and can you maybe share we can definitely get to the good things, but what are some struggles that you've had or some unique things that you've, had to work through?
Right. So during the pandemic, one thing that was happening so I live in California. In California, we were shut down probably a lot more than most states, and there was virtually nothing to do. And one of the things that was happening was I was getting a lot of requests over LinkedIn from matchmakers, and they were saying, we'd like to set you up. We looked at your profile, and we think you'd be an amazing candidate. So I'm sitting in my house completely bored. I had literally nothing to do. And I thought, all right, well, this will help me get through a day. I'm going to do this just to get through the day. So there was this one.
So real.
Right? And there was this one matchmaker, and she seemed very confident that she could find me someone, and I gave her my criteria. And during that time, there was this liability factor for the matchmaking services, so nobody could meet in person. So every date had to be over Zoom. So they set me up with this woman. I think she was a model in Washington, D.C. And we did the quick hi, hello. And the first question out of her mouth is, do you want to have kids? And I said, yeah, I'm open to it, but, we have to talk about everything. if a kid's unhealthy, we find that out in the womb. What if, adoption's not like, we got to talk about it 360. And then we continued the conversation and, we talked for another 30, 40 minutes about, who she is. And then it came time for the second Zoom date. And the second Zoom date, the first words out of her mouth were, "This isn't going to work." I said, "Why? Why isn't it going to work?" And she said, "Well, when I asked you if you wanted to have kids, you said you were open to it." I said, "That's right. I'm open. I'm open." And she goes, "That is not the right answer." I go, "What's the right answer?" She said, you should have said you're dying to have a child, and when we have that child, you're going to love that child way more than you'll ever love me. He said, "Wow." I said,
Wow.
I would never say that. She said, she said, "When I was a little girl, whenever my mom and dad were in the room and I walked into the room, my dad completely ignored my mom and gave me all of the love instead. That's how I want you to be."
Yikes.
And I said, "Yeah, I don't think that's me. I don't think I'm that kind of guy." I said, I don't think you understand, like the mom and dad are the units. And often the kid is doing everything it can to divide the mom and dad. So we have to stay strong together, you and I. And I learned a huge lesson from that date because I ended up going on, like, honestly, like 5 or 6 Zoom dates during the pandemic. And every time you went on the date, you're already sending a message. Like the first date, you're sending a message. And that message is, "Hey, I'm interested." Even though you may not even be interested at all, you're already sort of, that's sort of a given. And I think you're interested enough to, like, explore who this person is. But to, like, have future dates with them, it's just it's just like the next level. It's a whole other element. And so for me, I'm often okay to dip my toe in the water, but you get signs early on if somebody's overly interested, and I don't want to mislead anyone. And I'll be honest with you, I saw so many divorces during the pandemic. And I saw so many broken hearts. Uh,
So
and I
real.
just thought to myself, I might be lonely at times, but for the most part, there's peace. When I worked at radio, I was the phone screener. And one thing about being the phone screener is when people couldn't get on the air, they would tell you everything. And the vast majority of people hated their jobs and they hated their home life. So their only moment of
Yikes.
joy and peace was that 30-minute or 1-hour commute where they listened to our radio show. That was it. So, in a
Wow.
24-hour day, they had 45 minutes of joy, and then they didn't want to go to work and they were miserable at home. So all of these experiences, all of this sort of wisdom I've acquired through, I don't know, 21, 22 years and the pandemic, don't knock being single, because being in a terrible relationship is 1 million times worse. 1 million times worse.
So real, so real, Hooman. I think that's such a good point, and like especially for people who have a desire. I would say I have a desire for marriage, but I also have a lot of contentment in singleness. And the misconception is it's like the grass is always greener, and you can really miss out on living a really full life in whatever season you're in. And so I absolutely agree. Some of my friends are in really bad relationships, and prior to marriage, you still have a way out. And obviously in marriage you do too, but for the most part, obviously people are trying to, once they get married, stay married. But it's so interesting to me how they'll stay in a relationship and settle for someone because they don't want to be alone.
Right.
And so that is part of, like, honestly, why the impetus for this project and for the online course is to help people enjoy being alone, so that when you enter into a relationship, you're going to have a clearer lens. You're going to have, right, the right viewpoint to be able to evaluate this relationship. Because if you get into something, but the starting point or your baseline was you didn't like being alone, then when you get into a subpar relationship that isn't actually the best for you, but you don't want to be alone,
Yeah.
right? And so if your default or your baseline is you can't even enjoy being with yourself, then what relationship are you going to potentially settle for? And then along down the lines, obviously, right, we've all seen it, the train wrecks happen. And the divorce happens, and now maybe you have a few kids that are involved, and definitely families are involved regardless. And so that's definitely like one of our heartbeats for this project is to help people actually get to a place where you really enjoy being single, you really enjoy being alone. And then that baseline is going to set you up for success and a great foundation, regardless of your future, right? If you decide to start dating or you decide to get married someday, that default is pretty important that you can actually enjoy
I
yourself.
will say one thing that can enhance singleness that singleness is it's tricky because you have to be on some level a little bit of an extrovert. You have to be willing to build community and have friends and sort of throw yourself out there. So for introverts, singleness is very difficult at times. If you're content being single and, hoping obviously to find the right person, all of that, throw yourself out there, go join some organizations and some groups, go to comedy clubs, try to just get some kind of community if possible. I think in certain states, it's probably easier than other states. So yeah, that
Which is why we have an online community.
we do have
We
an
have an
online
online
community. Yeah,
community.
yeah.
So
And
yeah.
an online community is fine. It's fine, but there's nothing. You're right. You have to admit there's nothing like being in person.
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely. Everybody wants in-person community.
Yeah. I will say I was listening to a panel and there was this one really prominent marriage therapist on there. And the guy, he's seen, 2,000 couples in his career. And he was talking about people on their second marriage and the amount of effort they put into the second marriage. And every single one of them says, if we would have put a quarter of this effort into our first marriage, we wouldn't have gotten divorced. But because we don't want to be divorced twice, we're putting an exponentially amount of effort into the second marriage. So there's another wise lesson to learn there is if you get married, like there is going to be like obviously some challenges, but remember your vows, do everything you can to salvage it if possible. Because the statistics are the second marriage is way, way harder than the first.
Yeah, for sure. Or, the same common denominator issues are present, regardless of like the other person. And so that is also part of actually what we walk through in the online course is to help identify that root system that all of us are carrying around. We're all carrying around faulty lenses, lies we're believing about ourselves, about other people, about that dynamic of relationships. And part of the online courses, we help give you practical tools to help identify what is that root system that I'm carrying around that's really subconscious. It's things that we grew up with, things that were part of our family culture and dynamic that we may or may not be, consciously aware of.
Can I ask you a question?
But the goal, okay, sure.
I want to
for it.
hear about your last date because I've known you for so long. I don't even know if you go on dates. Have you do kiss on the first date? I want to hear some of your rules.
Hooman, we are going after this. Okay,
Why
yeah,
not?
I definitely have not talked about this. Okay, fair. This is fair. Okay, so my last date was a while ago. I won't say how long ago. It was a
like
while
more than
ago.
2 years?
It was more than 2 years ago.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. And well, I don't get asked out. This is interesting. I actually don't get asked out. So that's the thing.
Okay.
But I do have a pretty strong personality. I have a pretty confident personality, so I've been told that that could be intimidating.
It is
I don't know.
intimidating. I've known you for a long time. I'm intimidated.
What? Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm pretty friendly.
You are
I
friendly.
don't think I'm
But it's a
intimidating.
strong personality. Like, you're gonna need a real alpha male.
Yeah, well, I believe there's one out there. That'll be up for the
So
challenge.
5 years ago, you get asked out on
So
a date.
I get asked on a date, and it was really interesting. I would say, so I don't go on a lot of dates, but I would say, like, I get along with most people. And so, like, a first date is not I'm like not really that concerned about a first date. But I am pretty pointed. I don't ask, I guess. I don't think I've ever asked on a first date, do you want kids? But I am pretty specific, I would say, in kind of like what I want. I do not kiss on a first date.
Okay.
So, you're gonna have to work a lot more than that for a kiss. Just buy me dinner. Sorry.
Okay.
No. So I do not kiss on a first date, but I would say, like, I'm not like, I wouldn't say I'm an easy first date, but I would not say I'm the hardest first date. But I would say I am pretty pointed. I'm 36. I know what I'm looking for. And
What,
I know at least a
was there
baseline.
a second date after that first date?
Nope, there was not.
Wow. And did he
It has
try? Did he
been,
ask? And
yes.
you said
Mhm.
no.
It was not a fit.
You knew right
It was not
away.
a fit. I didn't know right away, but I definitely knew. I actually didn't know right away. I was open to a second date after the first date, but then it was conversations afterwards that I just realized he did not have any boundaries. To be honest, this is what it was. He had no boundaries. And I realized, I'm like, if he has no boundaries with me, and it was like emotional, it wasn't like sexting or anything, but it was definitely like emotional boundaries are being crossed left and right. Like, he was wanting to constantly text and do like Marco Polo. This is like a few years
Mm.
ago. And I have a life. I have a full life. And I'm not going to spend my whole life texting someone I've been on one date
Yeah.
with. Like, even, and the feelings were there, but I just was like, oh, this is a little too much too soon. And I realized, like, if he doesn't have these boundaries with me, then he probably doesn't have these boundaries with everyone else. And who knows, like, how many other girls he's doing this with. And I just asked him, I was like, okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he just like fell in love with me right away. And he was honest. And he actually said he was talking to a bunch of girls. And so I was like, you know what? Like, this just wasn't the right fit for me at this point in my life. And so that was that. And I do not regret that, by the way. I ended up finding out later from other sources that I was right about the character issues. So I'm not upset about it. Not a loss. It was a win that I realized that after only one date. Our time is valuable. And so I've joked about this, but I still think it's a pretty good idea that to do like a phone screen before you give like a full first date. For younger people who are just starting to date, I do not do dinner on a first date. I'll do a coffee. And really, my pro tip is to suggest something maybe like earlier evening. And that way, if it's going well, you could, if they're free, do dinner. And I'll intentionally leave that margin in my calendar. So if it is going well, like, we'll get a dinner. But if it's not going well, then I've not wasted 2 hours or 3 hours of my life. I really, at this point, my time is valuable. And yeah, I enjoy my friends. I enjoy like my community. And so I'm not going to give 3 hours to someone who I've really no context, if that is the right
Sure.
time, the right use of my time.
Right.
So I'm curious, what about you?
My last date.
Hooman, like, yeah, go for it.
It was a very accomplished on paper person, and we had a really lovely dinner. We did go on a second date, and during the first and second date, I'm 49, so I think she was maybe 5 or 7 years younger than me, and she our values didn't line up. I just asked her a bunch of very direct questions. And, she wanted to keep dating, and there were certain things that were pretty important to me, and I could see they didn't really matter to her at all. And so, after the second date, I'm like, listen, you're very beautiful, and, you're going to have a 100 dudes waiting at your door as soon as I exit, so you'll be fine. And it was it was a pleasant way of sort of separating, and then yeah, since then I don't think I've gone on any dates. Dating is very tricky. That's the thing. You gotta be in the mindset. You really have to be open to it, and that spark has to be there, and it just hasn't manifested itself over the past year. Also, I mean, this might seem like an easy out, but there's just people get triggered so easy, and we're so divided, and there's so many other factors that are kind of floating around, and you know, you're just sensitive to so many things. So I feel like
It's real. That's part of the dating dynamic these
yeah,
days. So interesting.
I feel like my attention isn't even quite what it used to be. It's so scattered. Don't get me wrong. Even though we're celebrating singleness, I too, like, if I can find that person that I can click with and they click with me and we, line up, because at the end of the day, it's one thing to have that instant chemistry, but you really do have to think about the long term, and is this person
So
yeah, is
true.
this person gonna want to be doing the things you want to do in a year from now or 2 years from now?
So good. Yeah, that's so real. Okay, so I'm gonna shift us because I know we're gonna be at time soon. So maybe the last year dating has not been a focus, but Human, you have been changing the
Oh
world.
yeah.
And I want to talk about your latest project because this is so fascinating and so beautiful, and honestly a testament to you being able to be single, hop on a plane, and do some really, really important work. So can you share? I just want to celebrate right now. What I love about this project is it's bringing these two people groups that arguably since the beginning of time have not gotten along. And yet this is in your story. And now you are bringing these two people groups in such a way of reconciliation that I think is so beautiful. When so many people try to pick one side, you've really found this beautiful storyline of reconciliation. And so can you speak to, I know we don't have a ton of time. I think we have like 5 minutes left, but can you share a little bit about this project and where people, I want to like have people give you money towards this project because I
That'd be
love it
amazing.
and I'm excited about it. So let us know too where we could contribute. But talk a little bit about what you've been up
Yeah,
to,
so
this mural
yeah,
project.
so in Iran in 2022, September 22, there was a woman named Mahsa Amini who was murdered by the Islamic regime for showing too much of her hair under her hijab. She's beaten to death. So
Wow.
right after that happened, there was this gigantic uprising, and it had been bubbling for a while, where women stopped wearing their hijabs. And so the Islamic regime of Iran went overboard and just started killing thousands of people. Um, Lo and behold, I get a message from the vice mayor. I helped birth a mural in San Francisco as a result of this. I didn't do very much. I just helped get a wall. And as a result, the vice mayor of Jerusalem saw that I helped birth a mural in San Francisco, sent me a message and said, I want murals in Israel, in Jerusalem, supporting the Iranian women who are fighting for their freedom. The reason
Wow.
this is so
Wow.
powerful is because up until that moment, there were already 75 murals in the world, and the Islamic regime didn't care. But Israel is the only country in the entire Middle East standing with the women of Iran who are fighting for their freedom. So
Wow.
at that point, and to this day, there are still no murals in Lebanon, Afghanistan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar. But on January 9th of 2023, about a year ago, I did the first mural in Jerusalem. And in 1 year, I've done 9 murals. So my goal
Wonderful.
is 18. I've been self-funding this. So as you mentioned, I am looking for people to contribute and donate and help me out. So I do have a website, and the website is Hooman, HOOMAN.TV, as in television. And there's a
All
donate
right.
link there. And yeah, anything you can contribute. The murals are fairly expensive. So I have gone into my savings, but the mission is too important. And, it's a beautiful thing when someone who's been murdered is remembered in Kansas City, Missouri, or Dallas, Texas, or Seattle, Washington. But you put that same face in Jerusalem or Nazareth or Tel Aviv or Haifa, and it's like an atomic bomb. They're like, wow, my mom is remembered in the Holy Lands. This the land that's the
Mhm.
holiest to the Jews, the Muslims, the Christians. So I feel like, this is my calling, and I want to see it through. So contribute if you can.
Yes, absolutely. Go to Hooman.tv to partner with this. But this is such, honestly, one of the biggest reasons why I hopped on board with this project of celebrating singles is because we have had the unique privilege and opportunity to interview so many people who are literal world changers. And Hooman, you are a perfect example of this, literally taking your background of being Iranian and being able to be such a catalyst for people to connect their human heart to these faces of these women who have been wrongfully and such an injustice of lives being taken way too young, but being able to use art to be able to help other people's hearts to
Yeah.
connect with these beautiful women that have had such an injustice and driving real change in the Middle East. And so I'm so proud of you as your
Oh,
friend.
thank
I'm
you.
so proud of this work that you've been doing. And if you're listening to this right now and your heart is being stirred for just a reconciliation of people in the Middle East and not necessarily choosing one side, but recognizing both sides are imperfect. Both sides have a lot to, work on. And yet we are still all human at the end of the day. And these are precious lives that are very, very important. And so I just love to see the work that you're doing and want more and more people to partner and contribute. And I'm just excited to see, what the future holds for you, Human, as we continue to celebrate the gift that is singleness, but also, future as we're talking, being open to dating and marriage, and seeing where it all takes
Yeah.
us. I'm pretty pumped. The future is bright for
It
sure.
really is. And you know what? For those of you who are single that are listening to this, like, just love your communities, your friends, reach out to them often. Don't feel isolated. Go and try new things. Explore the world if you can afford it. Like, all of that stuff goes away as soon as you get married, or a lot of it does. So take advantage of your singleness.
And I'll give a shameless plug. You can go to celebratingsingles.com and take our online course, join our online community to really grow in health and experience singleness in a brand new way this year. So, Human,
Thank
thank you. It's been such a pleasure. We're so grateful for your time today. And check us out every Tuesday. We're going to be dropping a new podcast. You can find us at Celebrating Singles on Instagram or celebratingsingles.com. So we love you guys. We're so grateful for our community and excited to see where this year takes us as we embark on this journey to experience singleness in a brand new way.